Two Jewish astronauts make the first manned flight to Mars. And upon landing, they find themselves face to face with a couple of very green Martians. How do we make contact? Asked the first astronaut. They look pretty primitive. Let's impress them with some of our technology. Okay, says the first. He reaches into the pocket of his spacesuit and he pulls out a shiny lighter. The Martians look interested. I think it's working. Light it, says the second. First astronaut presses the lighter and a flame shoots out. Immediately, the faces of the Martians turn from green to red. Wow, says the first. They must really be impressed. Then one of the Martians reaches out his little green hand and he points a finger at the men. He frowns and he sternly says, Shabbos! Think about it. When it comes to ritual law and Judaism, the two seem inseparable. No matter how secular one becomes, or for that matter, no matter how distant one travels in the universe, in the eyes of the Orthodox, in the eyes of the secular Israeli, considering what it means to be Jewish, and even for many of us and our mainstream progressive friends, we have this lingering belief somewhere deep inside that authentic Judaism means adherence to ritual law. I cannot tell you how many individuals I meet who feel the need to confess that they are not religious Jews. I don't keep kosher, I don't keep Shabbat, I don't attend shul. Some will say that they are spiritual, but almost no one admits that they are religious. However, in point of fact, I like to point out that they really are religious, religiously non-religious. In a way, I can appreciate the general non-involvement in certain religious practices. Mind you that I am by no means dismissing the importance of religious observance. I, for one, find great meaning in observing many rituals. Although even I will admit that some are so far removed from the original intent of Torah and are by some accorded such fanatic observance that they themselves become an act of idolatry. For example, take this conversation between God and Moses upon Mount Sinai. And remember Moshe. In the laws of keeping kosher, never cook a kid in its mother's milk. So you are saying we should never eat milk and meat together? No. What I'm saying is never cook a kid in its mother's milk. Oh, eternal, my God, please forgive my ignorance. What you are really saying is that we should wait 6 hours after eating meat before eating milk products so that the two are not in our stomachs at the same time. No, Moshe. What I'm saying is don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. Oh, great and holy God, please don't strike me down for my stupidity. What you mean is we should have a separate set of dishes for milk, a separate set for meat, and if we make a mistake, we should bury that dish outside. Good Lord, Moshe, by all the me in heaven, do whatever the heck you want. You wonder where Jewish obsessiveness comes from. Of course, to be fair, in the days of the Talmud, every rabbinic dictum that ultimately went beyond the law of Torah did so only in an effort to protect the original law from even the most remotest possibility of transgression. We were, after all, a very busy people, with all of the pogroms and expulsions and tribunals to distract us. No milk and meat was easy. One didn't have to stop and think whether the meat came from a kid or a lamb or whether it had been boiled rather than basted with milk, or for that matter, where the milk had come from. It was just easy. No milk, no meat, no worries. Truth be told, today we understand that the laws of kashrut were written to force a separateness between ourselves and other communities. If we couldn't eat together, we were less likely to do business together. If we didn't do business together, we were less likely to socialize together. If we didn't socialize together, we were less likely to marry together, which is a long way of saying we would be less likely to return to the ways of idolatry and more likely to adhere to the tenets of one God. And if we could adhere to the tenets of one God, the world had a chance of finally getting its act together, as we are supposed to be a light unto the nations. Well, today it is also clear that living separate lives from our neighboring communities is not only impossible, it's not even desirable. It is exactly because of our integration that we have accomplished as much as we have in the last 2.5 centuries. A brilliant renaissance of Jewish-inspired life, culture, spirituality, our contributions to science, social influence, political leadership. Yes, we have adopted many of the ways that the Torah and the rabbis had hoped we wouldn't. Some have been ruinous, but some have actually been really good. And the bottom line is, times have changed. And yes, we've lost a number from our ranks, but it is completely arguable that the loss we've sustained is due less to the lure of worldly pleasures around us and more to our own failure to reignite and reinstill the burning passion and purpose that brought us into covenant in the first place. Or for that matter, our failure to reinvent modern ritual, modern safeguards that would serve to keep us so impassioned. Of course, it means appreciating the relevance of such ritual and purpose. With all deference to my friend Patrick in the back and members of my own family, a Jewish man moved into a strict Catholic neighborhood. Every Friday afternoon, his neighbors would go practically crazy, because while they were eating only fish, the Jew was in his backyard barbecuing steaks. Finally, the neighbors sought to convert him. That would solve the problem. And in time, they wore him down. He's taken to a priest with all of the neighborhood in attendance. The priest sprinkles some holy water on the Jew and intones, "Born a Jew, raised a Jew, now a Catholic." His neighbors are ecstatic. No more delicious but maddening smells every Friday afternoon. But come the next Friday, the scent of barbecuing steak wafts through the neighborhood yet again. The neighbors all rush to the man's house to remind him of his new diet. They find him standing over the sizzling steak, a knife in one hand, his other hand dipping in water. He sprinkles water over the meat and says, "Born a cow, raised a cow, now a fish." Obviously, he didn't get it. Listen, a candle was a tool to bring light to a dark surrounding. When the light bulb took its place, the light bulb did a much better job. Kashrut was a tool to remind us whenever we felt secure in our sustenance, or we felt a rumbling because of our hunger, that the world around us is a dark and ailing place, and it is ours by covenant to make sure that hunger, among other things, is eradicated. And if avoiding shellfish and bacon doesn't do this, it's time to move from the candle to the bulb. And thus, already 10 years into its development, comes the concept of ethical kashrut. In other words, aside from the variety of animal it comes from, does food hold up to Jewish law if the people preparing it have been mistreated? Does it count as kosher if the animals involved are treated with disregard in their raising or slaughter? Can food be considered kosher if the result of its production has an adverse effect on the environment? Well, the Torah prohibits the mistreatment of workers, as all human beings are created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. We are disallowed from exploiting an employee, whether a countryman or a stranger in our land. Tsar ba'alei chayim, the mistreatment of animals, is also explicitly forbidden by the Torah. And Jewish liturgy is full of praise for God's demonstrated mercy to all creatures. In fact, animals are even given the Sabbath off. Environmental values are found in many of our agricultural mitzvot, including the creation story, where God charges every human being of the line of Adam to uvda u'shomra, to work and to guard the earth. The prophets railed against a Judaism that focused exclusively on ritual at the expense of ethical behavior. Isaiah, for example, tells our people, "Stop bringing to me your offerings. Your incense is detestable to me. Your new moon feasts, your appointed festivals, I hate them with all of my being. Instead, learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the orphan, plead the case of the widow." The story is told of a wealthy religious Jew who invited Rabbi Israel Salanter to his home. The host was very proud and very excited to have such a prominent scholar to entertain, and when dinner time came, he carefully shadowed his guest, hoping to witness acts of outstanding piety. But he was disappointed. When the time came to wash, the rabbi used the barest minimum amount of water. And when he took his place for the Sabbath meal, he ate very quickly, barely stopping to sing a Sabbath hymn or recite words of Torah. And eventually the host could not take it any longer. He had to express his disappointment. "Why did you use so little water when I have so much? And why did you rush through the meal?" Well, the rabbi looked at him and he said, "When I came to your house, I noticed an elderly maid who had to walk to the end of the garden to draw heavy buckets of water from the well. I did not want to trouble her to do more than she already does, so I used as little water as I could to wash my hands. I also saw that while we ate our Sabbath meal, she was waiting patiently to return home to her family to eat dinner with them. So I hurried so that we would not unnecessarily delay her." In other words, it's not enough to make sure that the food we eat is halachically kosher. I would suggest that we should endeavor to make sure that it is ethically kosher as well. And while most of us who keep kashrut, one form or another, believe it has the benefit of building community, of enriching our spiritual practice, of teaching gratitude, of raising awareness of the hungry, of inspiring us to eat in a healthful way, in short, serving as a constant reminder to holiness, it is primarily a ritual. And in and of itself, it doesn't necessarily make the world a better place. But in our world today, it is hard to ignore that our food choices have ethical implications. There are tons of disturbing aspects of our industrialized global food chain. As but one example, the majority of chocolate produced around the world, something almost all of us enjoy, I know I certainly do, depends upon 1.8 million child laborers of the Ivory Coast, the majority of chocolate produced around the world. These are child laborers who have no protections afforded them, are exposed to numerous hazards as they have to by hand apply pesticides and fertilizers and wield machetes, 6-year-olds, 12-year-olds with machetes, and who, for all of that, still live below the poverty line. As Jews, I would suggest that it is our obligation to question the overuse of pesticides and antibiotics, their impact on public health and the ecosystem, crowded and unsanitary conditions for livestock, slaughterhouses that are inhumane to both animals and workers, the abuse of undocumented laborers, and the use of child labor, not to mention the environmental costs of shipping products all over the world so that I can enjoy a tangerine in the middle of winter. The treatment of workers, the treatment of animals, the preservation of our planet are all essential Jewish values to their core. And while many of us may have no qualms about eating bacon, I can't imagine any of us agreeing that neglecting these basic Jewish values is a good and worthy practice. To do so flies in the face of tikkun olam, the healing of the world, which is a prime tenet of Reformed theology and motivation. The question then is, what do we do about it? Well, we begin by thinking it through. Begin by considering the foods that you purchase. Research where they come from. It's not really very hard anymore. You get online, it's a 1, 2, 3 from Google. Begin by recycling more, using more and more sustainable products. In fact, commit to taking on one facet of ethical kashrut at a time. But, and this is key, do it as a daily expression of your Judaism. Remember, for those seeking faith, the first step is connecting to that which exists outside of yourself. Ethical kashrut is not only a step on the path towards healing the world, but it gives us a meaningful, tangible, daily practice of Jewish import to engage in, all the while moving us one step further on the road to faith as we connect with the world around us. Over this year, as a congregation and in small groups through adult ed in Mossad Shalom, we're going to explore this concept of ethical kashrut, starting with a discussion on Yom Kippur afternoon. My hope will be that by the end of a year's time, and it certainly won't conclude with a year's study, we may begin to consider a policy for our congregation. And, God willing, spark a desire for personal Jewish practice outside of the synagogue. And my intent would not be to make us into over-the-top observant Jews, heaven forfend. Which reminds me of a quick story of the Israeli Olympic slalom racer. Maybe you've heard it. As you may know, in a slalom race, the skier must pass through about 20 gates in as little time as possible. Well, it happened that Israel had the fastest slalom skier in the world, and the country had great expectations for an Olympic gold medal. The day of the final came, and the crowd waited in anticipation. The French champion sped down the slope in 38 seconds. The Swiss was clocked at 38.7, the German at 37.8, and the Italian at 38.1. The Israeli was up last. Out of the chute, he flew. The crowd waited and waited and waited. 6 minutes was his time. "What happened to you?" screamed the trainer when he finally arrived back. Replied the exhausted Israeli. What meshugana fixed the mezuzah to each one of those gates? So no, I'm not suggesting that we become over the top. That's not what it means to be Jewish. That is not authentic Judaism. But given our obligation as a light to the nations, I would suggest to each of us that this is an important new facet of Jewish life, of Jewish right for the 21st century. And as those before us gave us a basis of living Jewish life, Jewish right, through laws such as kashrut, now it is our turn to provide that basis, that level of study, that practice relevant to our own age for those generations, not only ourselves, but those generations yet to come. This is something I believe each one of us can feel and be behind. And it's a way to express your Judaism every single moment of the day. So begin by thinking. Begin thinking it through. The dialogues are coming. Find something that you can hang your hat on and begin to use that as a daily expression. Make Judaism alive. Connect with each other, with our world, as we continue to try and connect with our God. Shana Tova.